Welcome to the future. Get ready to explore how spirituality and science will come together in the Age of Aquarius. Hosted by Jacy Nova.
Today, I'm honored to have on the podcast Susan Miller, the world's most famous astrologer. She's an early pioneer of the digital world. She founded her website, Astrology Zone, in December 1995. More than 2 decades later, she's published 10 books and writes horoscopes that are read by millions of people each month. Susan talks about her life as an astrologer and what we can all expect in the Age of Aquarius. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the future. I'm Jacy Nova, and this is the Age of Aquarius podcast. Today on the show, we have Susan Miller. You describe yourself as a philosopher who uses astrology to get at life's mysteries. When did this desire begin, and what mysteries were you initially looking to solve?
Well, I was born with a birth defect that was so rare that none of the doctors could figure out what was wrong with me. In those days, they didn't have the equipment. Even if they did have the equipment we have now, it wasn't as sensitive. They just didn't know what was wrong with me, and they therefore thought I was making everything up. My mother and father knew I wasn't. They could see I was in excruciating pain when I would get an attack. It was my left leg. And finally, I had the chief of staff at the Hospital for Joint Diseases, which is part of NYU Langone, very respected, one of the best hospitals in New York. And he said, we have to go in and just see what's going on. When he went in, he had a very tough time. I was in the hospital 11 months. He had to tourniquet me so tight, I was bleeding to death. They were trying to save the leg and me. And they made it so tight that I lost all feeling and control from the knee down, and I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't wiggle my toes. I couldn't move the foot. So he said, all right, we will take care of that. You will go into physical therapy for that. You're young. We can get it back. We can grow the new nerve along the old path, which was kind of revolutionary technique. And some of the residents didn't think it was possible. But my doctor got upset when they told me, oh, don't bet the farm on that. But no, they were able to do it. But I had 11 months in the hospital and 2.5 years at home doing homeschool. I never attended high school. I was dealing with this huge health problem, but the Board of Education works with kids who are sick, and they send a teacher to the house. I don't know if they still do that. They probably send the computer, send the child to the computer. But I had a teacher 1 hour for math, 1 hour for English, which I changed to 2 hours of math. And of course, I just wanted to know if there was a rainbow at the end of this ordeal. Would I walk again? Would I look like everybody else? Could I get rid of the big metal brace going up to my hip and the crutches? We lived in a walk-up, a very nice brownstone on 75th and 2nd Avenue. My mother knew astrology, but she refused to teach me. She said, this is not a parlor game. This is serious. And if you say something wrong to someone, well, they may never get a chance to meet another astrologer to get that straightened out. I could understand that. And she said, you'll start reading for your friends after a year. I said, but Mama, I don't have any friends. My friends are sick of me being sick. I was one of those kids that was happy to be alone. I was okay. I read an awful lot in bed. And when I was little and I would get attacks, I'd have my dolls or my crayons or whatever I needed. This was big. And my mother kept saying, no, I'm not going to teach you. You have to study 12 years before you can have a real good understanding of astrology and Western astrology, not integrating Vedic. And, I see young students eating the whole pie and other pies along. You can't do that. You have to study one discipline and get really good at that. And you're juggling a lot of oranges in the air because you have to look at all the planets when you're assessing a chart. You can't just look at one aspect. You have to see how it impacts all the others, plus the sun and moon. That's a lot of information to integrate. And then if you're looking at a progress chart and the transits, that's 30 heavenly bodies that you're integrating into one chart. It takes a while for your brain to be able to build the synapse and be able to deal with all that detail. And you have to like math. I think you have to. I do. Love math. Finally, my mother relented after I wrote to Horoscope magazine and asked the editor-in-chief if I would ever walk again. And she published my letter. But when my mother walked in the living room, she said, Did you write to Horoscope magazine? I thought, how did she find that out? Wow, maybe I had crumpled. I was trying to get a perfect letter. And in those days, you had a typewriter. So I might have crumpled up something that she found. No, she said, I think you're in the latest issue. That is your date of birth. That is your time of birth. Of course, I knew it because my mother told me when I was very little what time I was born. And that is your problem. So it must be you that wrote it. Did you write it? And I said, yes. I said, what did the lady say? And she said, let's read it together. I haven't read it yet. When an astrologer answers a question, they're not just looking at the aspects for health, which of course they have to, but they look at the family support, the attitude of the patient, whether she has a distinguished doctor, lives in a big city, perhaps access to facilities. You're putting a puzzle together like a detective. And so the editor-in-chief did all that, but she was using astrological terms I didn't understand. And so I said to my mother, after she had read it, which it looked good, the editor said, we think you're going to walk again. And I said, but what are those words that she mentioned? And she said, but you got your answer. And I looked at her and I just smiled. And she said, oh no, you want to check the editor-in-chief? I said, of course. I want to learn this myself. I want to make my assessment. I want to know. I was almost 15, but I had been studying before I went in the hospital. My mother had books around the house that I would love to peek in and read, but the formal education started when I was 15.
So you work with a lot of high-profile people. Why do you think your work has become so important to so many people, and why is everyone so interested in astrology now?
Well, that's kind of a two-part question. See, the internet allows you to be detailed. And I feel short when it comes to astrology. Writing short is misleading and confusing. I think you have to be comprehensive. That's why on Astrology Zone, every month I write between 35 and 40,000 words divided by 12 signs. I don't want to leave anything out. I might say to myself, well, I'm writing about Scorpio. Maybe they're worried about their apartment, that they need a new one. Let me see if I can find something to tell them, because everyone has a different reason for coming on. I don't know their rising signs, so I can, but they should read for their rising sign because it is just like your sun sign. Why do people like me? I don't know. I'm glad that they do. Maybe because I'm comprehensive, but I shouldn't really guess about that.
Is there any reading that you've done over the years that has stood out to you?
Well, they're all unique. There was one woman who wrote to me from India. Her family had made an arranged wedding, and it just wasn't working. She did not get along with the husband they chose. He was cold, he was distant. It just wasn't working. And she was living here in the United States, far from her family. And they told her if she married again, they would disown her. But she did marry again. She was in high tech in Seattle, up in that area, the Pacific Northwest. She did marry again and had 2 children. The first one was, I think, Arnica. she called her. She said that her father won't talk to her. Her mother isn't helping. And it's hurting her so much. And I looked at that chart and I said, you know, as people age, they get more mellow. We have to respect our mother and father. They gave us life. But this, I know, is very painful. I gave her times when I thought it might soften, but I'll never forget the pain that was in that letter. But here's the remarkable part. I had just come out with a book and I was doing book signings. I was in Seattle. It was about 6 months after I had received that letter. And it was early in the time that I had my website. It must have been around the year 2000. There was a long line of people waiting for me to sign their books. And one lady had a little child, 5 years old, a little girl who was so cute. I said to her mother, can I put her in my lap and play with her a little bit? She'd been such a good little girl. And I just wanted to hug her. And she said, that's Arnica. I'm the one who wrote the letter. My husband's in the back of the room with the carriage of my second child. And I looked at this beautiful family and felt how much her parents are missing by not seeing their little grandchildren and seeing what a loving husband she had married. He had come with her just to make sure the children were okay while she had her book signed. I'll never forget that. I still think about her. I hope her mother and father have softened and have welcomed her back. I felt there was a chance. So that was one that did stand out. I think about everybody after a chart reading is over. I can't do a lot of chart readings because I'm writing a lot. I'm writing my website and my app. I'm writing for Vogue Japan, W Korea, Tempo in Turkey, Claudia Brazil, Amica Italy, Vogue China. I'm writing all the time, so I can only do 1 or 2 charts a month these days. And when I do a chart, it's 2 hours.
Wow. That's a lovely story. It's such a powerful story. You say that astrology is not the art of predestination, for each of us has free will. Why do you believe that astrology doesn't decide our fate? Well,
no, the ancients said that. I mean, we know that. Look, you are a part of it. I can say it's a great time to find a new apartment. You might say, well, I kind of like my apartment. It's in the perfect neighborhood. So do you want to do anything to it? Would you like to fix up the kitchen or the bathroom? Or maybe you might say, oh, my husband's out of work. I can't do that this year. I'll say, okay, is there a piece of furniture you'd like? You'd probably get it at a bargain. So there are different levels. If none of the above fit, the house of home also rules your parents. You might be able to do something nice for your mother or father. Maybe your mom would like auto pay on her checkbook, or your father may need you to help pack up some boxes that they're going to move to a warm climate. You have a choice. If you say, I'm going to sit out this dance, it's okay. Now that the real sweet part of some of the predictions are rare. Like, for example, that one, Jupiter in the 4th house, would only happen every 12 years. So I'll say it's not going to come for 12 years, but that's okay because something else is good coming. You are in control. You are driving the car. We are not little pawns at the mercy of the universe. Yes, we are confronted with challenges and with rewards on a systematic basis. In the chart, you see how systematic it is. Because with math, you can look backwards or forwards in time. I can see your life when you were 7. I can see what's coming in 10 years because it's math. It's all study of the cycles and how the planets are relating to each other. I put it this way. Imagine 8 people at a cocktail party, plus the sun and moon make 10 people at this cocktail party. You may see 3 people talking to each other. in a lively debate. You may have two people arguing. You may have Venus and Mars kissing each other on the sofa in the corner. You may have Uranus acting a little erratically, like thinking he can fly and wanting to jump out the window. We have to talk him out of it. There are different things. When I'm writing about each sign, I don't write about the sign. I try to become the sign and look at the world through their eyes. And that's why I talk about what's already happened, where you are now, and where you're heading. Especially when I write the year ahead. That's the most difficult manuscript I write. It takes me 5 months. Actually, I have to write a calendar first. I have a calendar that I sell, which is now sold out, but I have all the information also on the premium version of my app because readers were disappointed, but I didn't expect such a run on them this year. This year was really, they just flew out, and they're on archival paper and they're $27 a piece. I mean, they're beautiful pieces of art. I hire the best artist, but I have key dates in my app, which if people want, there's a free version of my app. They can get it for free. Your listeners can just go into Apple App Store, Google Play, and just put in Susan Miller. I come up first. The full name is Daily Horoscope, Astrology, Zone, and More by Susan Miller. But just put in Susan Miller, and I come up wearing a white blouse, smiling. We had to put my picture on it because some people were using my name in their search terms, and it was becoming confusing. So if you see my picture and I have dark hair and a big smile and a white blouse, and you can get it for free. And then the premium version is an in-app purchase that you can upgrade for $1 a week, $5 a month. Google and Apple take 30%. They're welcome to it. They're doing a lot of bookkeeping on their end, and they're great partners. So they deserve it. So I have to charge $5 a month, but anybody can stop the auto renewal anytime as soon as they finish the term of the subscription, like 1 month that they buy. Or some people buy 3 months, some people buy a year. But if you're trying it out, try 1 month, That's what I've been doing. That's why I can't do a lot of charts for people. I'm really managing a lot of content.
What advice can you give people about what's going on astrologically right now? Obviously, some people feel like it's uncertain time that we're living in. When you're
studying astrology, you're looking at cycles within cycles within cycles. Imagine the little Russian dolls going inside each other. That's really what astrology is. Or imagine being on the top floor of a glass building. And the first layer, as you're looking down, all the floors are glass. On the bottom floor, you have the natal chart. The next floor, you have the secondary progression chart, where we progress each planet 1 degree for every year you've been alive. And then we have the transits on the next floor. And I'm looking down and seeing how the planets are relating to each other. There's a lot to look at. Now, a very important trend, one very rare cycle, occurred on December 20th, 2020. It will affect all of us. Now, I'll tell you about this. This is pretty exciting. It's called the Grand Conjunction. And Jupiter met with Saturn, as he does every 20 years, almost to the minute, every 20 years. But they do meet in a different month and a different sign. And the sign that they meet in colors all of society, the fashion, the literature, the music, the theater, the jewelry, the everything, the cuisine, how you work and how you approach it. Everything is colored by the signs these two meet in. Now, what's interesting is for the past 200 years, they've only met in Capricorn, Virgo, or Taurus. They never stepped on each other's toes. It was actually Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, Taurus, Capricorn. There was one exception, which I'll get to in a minute. happened in 1980, but I'll talk about that later. So for the past 200 years, we've only had Saturn and Jupiter meeting in an Earth sign. Now, first of all, the reason these two planets are so important is they're right in the Goldilocks area of the solar system. They don't move so fast the way Mercury, Mars, or Venus move. They move very fast, or so slowly like Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And Pluto's extremely important in a chart. He may be a little guy, and he is. He's a tiny little planet, but he's super powerful. So now you have in the middle Jupiter and Saturn. So what did we accomplish in the past 200 years? It's really interesting to think back. And I think in New York, it was a swamp and a forest, you know. You went to a general store to get cereal. You couldn't go to a supermarket. And the man would scoop out oatmeal and put it in a little paper bag. Or if you needed a new dress, the lady would show you fabric that had come in on the ship, and you'd have to go home and make your dress. There was no off-the-rack clothing, you know, so life was very, very different. What did we do during the past 200 years? We made cathedrals and skyscrapers and roads, bridges, tunnels, railroad tracks were laid down. But we also had the Industrial Revolution, the beginning of the assembly line, and that changed everything. So Earth is mainly consumeristic, where you can touch and feel the products that are created with Earth element, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn. Now, when December 20th came, I was telling my friends I remember having dinner with two of my girlfriends, a beautiful restaurant. The waiter is clearing away the table. He's about to bring the tea or coffee and a little dessert we'd all share. And it was 2 years before this grand conjunction. And I said, everything's going to change because Saturn and Jupiter are meeting in Aquarius. That's an air sign, not an earth sign. So what's going to happen? What do you mean everything's going to change? I said, we're going to do our work differently. We're going to use different tools. We're going to dress differently. We're going to even eat differently, you know, and politics will be different. See, when you have a patriarchal society, that's mainly Earth, the king or the president tells you what to do, and everything trickles down. But when you have Aquarius or Gemini or Libra, but especially Aquarius, that's grassroots. The people tell the government what they need. So then we get 2020. Okay, it happened in December, that conjunction, and all of a sudden Saturn, which is part of the partnership here between Saturn and Jupiter, they had dinner, they were deciding what they're going to give society. All of a sudden Saturn goes into Aquarius on March 20th, and suddenly the world shuts down. Pretty much everybody shut down around the 20th of March. And we were getting like a sense that things were changing. We were learning about Zoom. We were working from home. The Earth's crust was starting to heal because nobody was on airplanes. Nobody was in cars. There was no pollution, at least here in America when everything stopped. I think in Europe too. I'm not sure about China and India, where there was such a large public population, but even they were trying, you know, to contain this virus that was rampant. And we were wearing different clothes. We were wearing more relaxed things because we were home. And employers realized that we worked harder at home, something I've always known, but a lot of people didn't know. People work harder when they're alone. They don't have the distraction. They know what they have to get done, and they do it. Now, what will come from this? Aquarius is digital. And we even saw with the Black Lives Matter how people were so upset about the death of Mr. George Floyd. And people took to the streets. And the governments were listening. And that was happening during the pandemic. Just when we were all home watching television, everybody was in the exact same situation. I would talk to my editors in Japan that were putting out a magazine from each other's houses. And my daughter in LA, who works with CBS, was creating her part of the show. She's a music producer from her apartment. And everyone was working separate from each other. Aquarius has this propensity to create distance. And we all felt it. I feel that in the future, there will be driverless cars pretty soon and driverless trucks and flying taxi cabs. I live on the 29th floor. That's terrifying. They'll go by my window here in Manhattan. There's a lot of change coming that we're going to have to adjust to. Now, the reason the vaccine was able to gallop forward so quickly, well, first of all, it had the money. Usually getting the money for the research takes forever, but that was taken care of by the government. So then you have the partnerships. Like I know Pfizer was working with England, with Denmark, with different countries. And let's say a scientist in New Jersey was working on part of the problem with the vaccine. And he was ready to work on another part when the Watson computer was popping up a white paper in France of someone who had worked on that very part and had a solution. And our scientist in New Jersey said, wow, this fellow's already done a lot of work. I'm going to give him a call. And maybe we can collaborate and get to the next level. So there wasn't redundancy. And of course, there were trials and tests to make sure everything was working. And I'm sure they had to tweak things. I'm not saying that didn't happen. Of course it did. But everything was shrinking. The communication was so good. We also have CRISPR in Switzerland, I believe. It's in Switzerland. And in the future, they'll be able to take out inherited diseases in our DNA, like macular degeneration or sickle cell anemia, or different awful diseases that make people suffer. Will we have to have rules and laws? Absolutely. Because we can't have designer babies. We can't have old blue-eyed blondes or all little boys or all little girls. We have to have some rules that the governments all over the world set up, and they're slow. When I started on the internet, it was the Wild West. It was crazy. I had a federal trademark. People were stealing my material anyway. They didn't care, and everybody was having that problem. It was just wild. And it was like riding a bucking bronco. So we may go into something like that because governments are slow to make laws when it comes to new technologies. So they're going to have to, kind of ramp up a little quicker this time. And AI is coming, and it's just so interesting to see. The only problem is that Aquarius is distant. So everybody's probably experienced going to a restaurant and they give you a QR code, a little piece of paper on the table instead of a menu. That's when they thought the virus settled on paper or surfaces. It doesn't. And I know a lot of us said, could I just have a menu? And they did give you one. But this distance, and all of us are on Zoom all the time, but we miss, I miss, at least speaking personally, miss seeing people a little bit more often, especially in business. I am able to see a friend. I usually only have one friend at a time, maybe two, but that's it. When I go out to eat, I'm careful. and everybody here in New York everybody wears a mask. Doormen will not let you in the building without a mask. You don't get delivery to your door. If you order takeout, you go downstairs and you pick it up. If you're giving cash, the man will wait until you come down. It's new. There's some very good things about it. The teleconferences that therapists have set up, psychiatrists, some people are a little hesitant to try a psychiatrist, but tapping in on your computer seems so much easier than having
going into an office. Do you think the Age of Aquarius will ultimately bring us closer together as a community, or is it more of a global consciousness about the future?
I think it will be both. Aquarius loves to work in groups. When the CEO of Pfizer said, look what can be achieved when no one cares who gets the credit. That's so Aquarius. Aquarius is modest. It doesn't care. Now, I told you that there was a little aberration in 1980. There was. Jupiter and Saturn met in Libra. That's an air sign. And then it went back in 2000 to Taurus. And every time the universe is going to do something big, it gives us a little preview. I say to myself, why? Why does that happen? Why is it necessary? And it was driving me a little crazy. I'm walking around the house thinking, and then it hits me. People born in 1980 are now about 40 years old, 42. They have good jobs. They have made decisions in life. Some have gotten married. Some have bought a house. Some have started a business. It's kind of rare to get to 40 without making some big decision in your life. Most don't live home with their parents. You get married, you have a baby, you do things, and everybody's different. But it is those babies born in 1980 plus or minus 5 years, 1975 to 1985, because I always need a plus or minus tolerance to my math. Those are the ones who are going to offer their hand and lead us across the rickety bridge to the other side of the ravine, to the new way of living, because they have this in their DNA. They're born with Jupiter and Saturn in air. For the first time in decades and decades of those planets meeting in Earth. So they have a different sensibility, and they're comfortable with this new meeting in Aquarius, totally comfortable. They absorb the changes easily, and they will be the leaders in this next revolution, I think.
On the news, they talk about the Great Awakening or the Great Reset. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that the universe made us all have a timeout. I think it's always valuable to break the chain of routine. When you lose a job because the company's cutting back, or you break up with someone, or your favorite hairstylist has moved cross country. We don't like it when the chain breaks. We hate it. But that's when opportunity comes in. And we see that there's a big world out there, and there are other options. And sometimes it gets better. So we have to have that optimism and to move forward, because things have a shelf life. Relationships, terms of agreements have a shelf life. And we always want things to last forever, but they don't. I think living in New York, I had to get used to my favorite buildings getting torn down and people moving in, moving out. You get used to a lot of change here. And there is an energy to it. So I do believe that people broke the chain of routine. And I said, am I contributing enough to society? Is it feeding my soul, the job that I have? Would I be better suited somewhere else? Could I use my talents better? Do I need to go back to school? Or do I don't want to go to graduate school because I don't want to do remote learning for graduate school? Or maybe I do because it's convenient and I just got married and it's just better to stay home. It just depends. Everybody's case was different, but breaking the chain, going home and just thinking, I think is what caused the Great Resignation. But sooner or later, those people will be going back to work. I know that they've created this big void of lots of jobs out there and nobody, filling them. Economists say that people will run out of money sooner or later, and they're going to have to make a decision of where they're going next. But I think thinking is always the better part of action. Thinking comes first, then action. And sometimes we rush into things, or we're just so busy putting out fires that this was a big deal experience. And I think some people underestimated what a big deal it was. I knew this was going to last years. I feel that when Saturn leaves Aquarius, which is respiratory, we may get some relief in March of 2023. I don't think it'll ever quite go away. When you look at the Spanish flu, which shouldn't have been called the Spanish flu because it started in Kansas, it never really went away. If you ask Google, it says, you say, when did it go away? And it says, never. The seasonal flu that you get a shot for every September, that's the Spanish flu. So we're probably stuck with this because there were just so many hosts that weren't vaccinated that the virus was able to proliferate and grow in strength and also create variants. I kind of think the horses are out of the barn. What worries me is Pluto is going into Aquarius. Now, that's a good thing because that will speed up the age of Aquarius and the digital age, and it'll be so exciting. And we're also lucky to be alive during the transfer from the Earth age to the air age. I mean, most people live within that 200-year period and they never get to see anything different. But we are moving into Aquarius where there'll be warmth and of friendship and working together. You will see partnerships between companies. Instead of competing with each other, they'll work with each other to solve problems and create maybe a new company together. But there'll be much more cooperation because that's what Aquarius does best. And they think outside the box. They're very innovative. And things that they say, sometimes people need time to catch up to because so radically different.
Yeah, we are definitely going through a lot of changes. I'm optimistic as well. What steps can we all take to help improve our emotional well-being during this time and improve our relationships in the new year? Because I found with friends and family, some struggle more than others. Part of it to me is like being kind to others because you never really know what's really going on with them and trying to be supportive and listen more. And I just wondering what advice you might give to the listeners.
Oh, I love that. I mean, we always think that everybody has it easy and that we're the only one with a terrible dilemma. It was really terrifying for people who worked in the restaurant business. Although I have a very close friend who was a general manager, could not get a job at all. He contacted the chef of the business he used to work with because they fired everybody. The minute New York shut down, they fired everybody. And they're starting their own restaurant. And from what I hear, people are starting businesses at record rates. I hope that they're doing all the necessary homework because you have to follow certain rules when you have your own business. And it does take 3 years usually to make a profit. There are exceptions. But hopefully if people are doing the homework and finding out what's involved and talking to other people who have gone through it, that's the best way, then they could be happier because they're captains of their own ship. I always believe that the way to get out of the doldrums is to start something new. I was very sad when my mother died in 2012. And then finally I said to myself, what would she have said? And she would have said, start something new, Susan. And that's so true. I started doing many more videos and things of that nature. But during the pandemic, one of my daughters gave me a gift certificate to Blue Apron. And that's one of those meal boxes that they give you all the ingredients. And I thought, well, gee, will I have the time? She said, Mommy, you always used to cook. You loved cooking. And after Grandma died, you stopped cooking. And it's true. I stopped cooking and I stopped having flowers in the house. And I didn't realize there was a tiny bit of me that was depressed because I was so functional. That meal box changed my life. I'm a regular subscriber. I became a really serious home cook during the pandemic. I also devised a new app, which I will put on the market in February. It's finished. I just have to write the Apple and Google description. It will not interfere with my other app, which I had redesigned in the year 2000 on August 28th. It was on the market. This is an addition to help people. I published 2 calendars. I worked with different big companies. I did new things. And that's the only thing that can get you out of that I am all alone and this is going on forever. You know, I'm okay alone, but a lot of my friends are not. And if they do something new or learn something new, there's so many great courses like the Masterclass series online that's affordable and you can learn so many new things. You have to have something to look forward to. And if you've lost someone from COVID, that takes a long time to get used to and adjust to, you know, and we just have to help each other. We should look around to people right under our noses are suffering and we don't know it. So being sensitive to others, like you said, the kindness is very important.
I try to have a conversation with somebody new every day, whether I'm at the grocery store or I'm walking. You know,
I love that. That's a very New York thing. When you sit at a counter at a luncheonette, you always talk to the person at the end. It's so nice because everybody has a story and it's fascinating. You know,
I love stories.
People are friendly. Americans are friendly. But people who come from other countries to live here become like us.
That's true. That's very true. Are there any questions I haven't asked you, about the Age of Aquarius that you want to share with the listeners before?
Well, I think it's just fascinating what they're doing with the holograms. It was on 60 Minutes, and 60 Minutes is a show that I would never miss because it has so much about digital and NFTs and everything in there. And people are trying different things and Bitcoin and blockchain and, all these things. Well, first of all, we should all read up on it. I believe in reading the paper every day. And even if you only have 15 minutes, I find if it comes to my door, it's right there. And I get hit with news that I wouldn't normally search for. Because when you're searching, you're pulling news in. I want to be given it, I want it pushed to me. So I like a paper, newspaper, but reading up on it, talking to people. I find talking to people all the way back to ebooks in 2002, when I did my first, I found more accurate information on the street. Yes, later it does show up in the media and the press, but you get that sweet information first. And I remember when I started Astrology Zone, it was only a few months old, and it was on Time Inc.'s website, Pathfinder, before AOL got involved with them. And there was a lunch being given by Sprint, and I said to the people I worked with, who I reported to, let's go to the Plaza Hotel and hear what they have to say. And I'll never forget this. The man stood on the stage and he said, some of you are not sure if the internet is a fad or is here to stay. And some of you are going to go to sleep. And you'll set your alarm for 5 years from now. And when it goes off, you'll turn on your TV to the news. And the headline news is you're out of business because you haven't been getting in there and working through all the new things that are happening and learning about it and falling over and getting up and dusting yourself off and learning when the rest of us are learning. If you start 5 years from now, you're going to be behind us. And that's not good. You have to get in there now, even if it's terrifying to your company or to you. Get in there because there's always people who can explain things to you. And plus, it's fresh and new and exciting. You know, I saw on 60 Minutes, they had the robots that were doing the mashed potato. They were actually dancing. And I love having Siri on my phone. She looks up things. Now, often she gets everything wrong, and you have to watch her because she can be a little dizzy blonde sometimes, you know. But I once told her, tell Brian I'll be there at 12:30. And she said, here's what I'll tell Brian. You'll be there at 12:30, and then you'll both go for a little drive. Oh, my God. Siri, are you crazy? Oh, no. We're going to do this again. So you do have to watch her. We're still in the infancy of these digital assistants. And I'm sure Alexa at my desk here is listening to everything I'm saying. But I have nothing to hide. There'll be some hits and misses. But, you know, when I started on the internet, you know, the way the internet is based, you're getting information pinged from different countries. You're going from Dallas to Philadelphia to New York to Seattle and then over to Europe, and it's pinging all over the place. And that's why e-commerce was so hard to start, because somewhere along the line, the money was falling out. The information about the credit card was falling out. And I thought, gosh, this will never work. How are they going to do this? And it did work. And I remember the first movies on my Mac were the size of a postage stamp, and it would crash your computer. After a few minutes of watching the movie, it would crash. And you were on dial-up, you know. And then when Wi-Fi was developed, you got misinformation from the news. They said, oh, you got to be careful. Other people can get your banking information. And they scared you. And my children came over and said, just get it, or we won't come over here anymore. You know, after they grew up and they moved out, you know, of course you want to see your children. I said, you don't think it's dangerous? No. I said, God, the news is making me so scared. So I got it, and it was fine. You know, sometimes you have to vet the information you're getting. But often there's a new company that's in charge of that called something Guard, Truth Guard, something like that. It was on CNN yesterday. You know, the internet it's a mirror of life. There's the good, the bad, and the ugly, you know, but there's a lot of good there. And the problem with misinformation, the man described this as one of the guests said, when you used to go to a library, you knew the author you wanted to read, you knew something about their biography and the publisher who published the book, and they invested in this person. And the librarian knew things that you could ask. But now walking into the library is like millions of pages swirling around everywhere. And you grab a page and you don't know if it's verified or not. And that's why he started this company that verifies news and gives ratings to different websites. He said actually the area where he found the most misinformation was in medical, which surprised me. And he said pre-pandemic, and of course it only got worse during the pandemic because people want the advertising revenue. And some people will say almost anything. And we know that from robocalls telling us that our Social Security has been hacked or that there's a problem with our credit card, when it's not true. People spend their time. We have such a limited time in life. Why would we spend it like that, But as the New York Times said, in India, people are suffering. They can get jobs being robocallers, and they're paid, and not a lot, but they're paid. And when jobs are scarce, they take it. So there's that. Life has gotten more complicated. So we have to be more aware and more informed and communicate more with each other.
My last question, what are you most excited about in the Age of Aquarius? What are you most looking forward to?
Oh, well, the driverless cars, because I don't know how to drive. I was in the hospital all that time when kids learn how to drive. And my father would never let me use his car. And driving in Manhattan is like, terrifying because the cabs are like cowboys, So I'm looking forward to that. I love some of the new things I have right now, like Instacart. What a great invention. When I'm at a deadline, I can just tell the grocery store what I need. The shopper calls me up or texts me if they're out of stock on that one item. Oh, boy, has that helped me a lot. I couldn't even have a website if the computer hadn't been developed. So I'm looking forward to the artistic expressions that come out of the pandemic, because we've all gone through the exact same experience. And I think there will be books, novels, theatrical performances, music, different things that will echo what someone went through. And some of us will say, I felt that way. Oh, wow, he's just shown me a perspective that's different. Whatever it is, I'm looking forward to seeing that. And I'll tell you something. In 2022, Neptune will meet with Jupiter in Pisces. Why is this important? Neptune rules Pisces, but in ancient days, Jupiter ruled Pisces before Neptune was discovered. So modern astrologers look at both. And because they're both going to meet in Pisces, it's going to be extra strong. And Neptune is the planet of the arts. And Jupiter expands everything it touches. And I think that by the end of 22, see, things don't happen on the day that the cycle starts. It happens in time. So by the end of 22, I think we'll start to see a template for our times. Just like when the Spanish flu ended, we had the Roaring 20s. And the beautiful short dresses, our grandmothers, great-grandmothers didn't wear those pretty dresses. They had long dresses, if we think back, we take things for granted that it was always this way. No, and the music and the literature and the everything, the jewelry, the Art Deco, it influenced architecture, but it rippled right into jewelry. And it was just so exciting. And the exuberant happiness when the masks could come off. They wore masks then too. It's fun to look on the internet and see the black and white sepia pictures of people walking around with masks and nurses helping people with their vaccinations and different things. They didn't have the medicine we have now. I'm looking forward to the artistic expression because it'll give it a stamp for our time, just like the Roaring 20s did for 1920, after the Spanish flu was finally under control.
I love that. Susan, it's been so amazing to have you on the show. Where can listeners learn more about you, access your monthly horoscopes, if you want to share that information, and we'll also include it in our show notes?
Oh, sure. Just go to astrologyzone.com on your computer or download the free app. Just search Susan Miller on Google or Apple App Store. And the full name is Daily Horoscope, Astrology Zone, and More by Susan Miller. It's a plus for and. But the monthly is what put me on the map. So I would say if you get the free version, look also at the monthly. Don't skip that part. You'll have plenty to read while you're on the train or on the airplane. It'll keep you occupied for a few minutes, at least 10 minutes. Hopefully it'll trigger some ideas in you where you get to decide what trends to pick up on and put in your life, and the ones to just let go and wait for the next. So that's what's great about astrology. You get to decide.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm definitely going to go check out my monthly horoscope.
I am thrilled that you called me, because when the letter came in, I said to my assistant, that show is truly different. I want to be on it. I hope they invite me, and you did.
I'm so honored. That's so kind of you to say that. It's been a great conversation, and thank you.
Thank you.
You just heard the Age of Aquarius podcast with your host, Jacy Nova. Remember to subscribe to the show on your favorite streaming platform. Thanks for tuning in.
Age of Aquarius is a cosmic media production and recorded in Los Angeles, California. A special thanks to our producers, Georgie Rutherford and Christopher Lang. To learn more about Age of Aquarius, please visit our website at ageofaquarius.fm. Thanks for listening.